So again, you guys are here in regards to the Continuum of Care program. What we wanted to do as an opportunity to kind of kick off our year is begin to provide more of a group technical assistance to various areas of the Continuum of Care program, or HUD-COC program. One of the items that we want to begin discussing is HQS, or Housing Quality Standards. There will be a series of other technical assistance opportunities for you and your team to participate in, and those will also be sent out similar to the same way that we did for this one. This morning, I went ahead and attached the documents, including the presentation for today, in the calendar appointment. So if you do not see those, please let me know. You can put that information in the chat box or just take yourself off mute and let me know. But those documents, again, are in the appointment calendar. And what I'll do is I will also send an email to the group with the attachments after our presentation today, along with their recording. So today we will focus on HQS and just some of the guidelines and information and forms that should be used while providing those HQS inspections on your units. Some of the topics that we'll be going over today are here on this slide. We will discuss our overview of the housing quality standards, the types of inspections, the actual process, any protocols and physical inspections. We will touch base on our lead-based paint, talk about the dwelling sizes. I do have on here housing authority presentation, but that's I don't want to say actual presentation. It's just some best practices that we've taken from the Housing Authority. And then, of course, the record keeping and documentation that we want you all to keep in your client files. So I've already actually introduced myself. My name is Jamie Gibson. I'm a senior program specialist here with the Continuum of Care. I also have two other staff coworkers on the line. If you guys would like to introduce yourselves, if you could please.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Rashana Walker. I'm a senior program specialist with HWS.
Hi, good morning. My name is Martha Samaniego. I'm one of the program specialists with HWS.
Thank you both. So we'll go ahead and jump in unless anybody has any questions right now before we get started. Just looking at my other monitor to see you all if anybody raises their hands, and I also have the chat available. Okay. So overview of housing quality standards. This is taken from regulation, and we want to make sure that this is included for reference for you all. So this is to accomplish the goal of providing decent, safe, and sanitary housing at an affordable cost to low-income families. The regulation 24 CFR 982 that's set forth with HQS, or housing quality standards, in which all units must meet before assistance can be paid on behalf of the family, and at least annually throughout the term of the assisted tenancy. HQS includes requirements for all housing types, including single and multifamily dwelling units, as well as specific requirements for special housing types, such as manufactured homes, congregate housing, single room occupancy, shared housing, and group residence. Inspections would be applied to the building and premises as well as the unit itself. And HQS inspections are a requirement to the HUD-COC program, however, does not apply to all programs. So I use this as an example. ESG only requires a habitability inspection, though an HQS inspection is allowable. So please keep that in mind, that this information applies to our HUD-COC programs that we're discussing today. In the types of inspections that there's actually 4 different ones. So your initial inspection is what we also refer to as the move-in inspection. And this is conducted upon the client's move-in into a specific housing unit and before the execution of the lease and the initiation of the payments. So what we like to say is we can't start payments on this unit until we have a past HQS inspection in file. Another type of inspection would be that annual inspection, which is conducted to ensure that the COC program housing unit continues to meet HQS throughout the tenancy of the COC participant that's on program. There's also complaint inspections, which is conducted when a request by the client or the owner based on a perceived violation of HQS has been received. That could be via phone call. That could also be in writing. That would prompt us to do that sort of inspection. And then we also have a special or quality control inspection. This would be conducted or requested by a third party, and this would actually be done by HWS staff, COC staff, who will monitor HQS by conducting quality control inspections for a sample of 10% of a project's actively enrolled units. And this usually happens during the monitoring period. We would go out and make sure that the inspections are meeting standards. So there's also a couple of flow charts in here for those who are more of a visual, and will help you to understand the process of each of these inspections. So for a move-in inspection, you would start at that far left bullet of the subrecipient, which would be you, staff. HQS inspection would be conducted prior to move-in. And there's two options there, whether the rental unit will pass that inspection or if it actually fails the inspection. If the unit passes inspection, then the client can go ahead and move into that unit. But if it fails for inspection, then we have some other options here. We can, at that point, come back to the office and prepare a notice to repair that we issue out to the owner of the unit, letting them know what repairs need to be conducted or done within the requested time. And then at that point, it would prompt us to re-inspect the unit once we are made aware of the repairs that are done. And if those are passed, then the client can at that point move into the unit. If the inspection fails, then the client would not move in. And that may be because the property owner wishes not to make such repairs. And an example that I can use of that is building permits, or if there's a structure added to the home that's not permitted and the owner cannot provide permits and does not want to remove that, then we would stop the inspection process and not lease that client in that unit. Also, with move-in inspections, if the unit fails, it could also fail because an appliance may not be in there, whether that might be a refrigerator or a stove. If either of those are not in the unit, that would be considered inconclusive, and the inspection would then pass once that appliance is moved in to the actual unit. So sometimes that happens if the tenant's responsible for the appliance. It may not be there at the time of inspection, but what we can do as a program staff worker is provide them with an inconclusive statement where they can certify the date that they moved that appliance in, which would then indicate that as the pass date of the unit. And that does not need an additional time to go out and physically inspect. It would be a certification on that form. Another flow chart that I have is also for annual inspection. So it's very similar. It would start again, the subrecipient conducting that HQS annual inspection prior to the recertification, right? Because going back to the beginning, we can't continue paying on a unit unless we have a past inspection. And for continuum of care programs, you have to have a past inspection within 365 days of the previous. So this would need to be conducted prior to the recertification. At that point, if the unit passes, then of course we have the ongoing assistance that we continue paying for the client. If the unit fails, it's going to be the same information. We would issue a notice to repair to the owner or the client, because there could be some client items that the client needs to address. Or if they're owner related, giving them a reasonable amount of time to make those repairs. We would re-inspect and then pass that inspection for ongoing assistance. Or we could go into the same situation where maybe those repairs are not to be made. The owner does not want to make the repairs. Then we would have to, at that point, not recertify the client and relocate them. Another chart here is the quality control or special inspection. Up at the top, you'll see the 3 bullets, which is HWS staff would contact the agency, which would be your agency, with the list of clients that we would be inspecting. When the agency receives the client list, you would review that for accuracy, making sure that those are still active clients and that they're still in the said units that we're requesting. And then the agency would contact the client to provide the dates of when our staff would be scheduled to inspect those units. And a flow chart in that case is if our staff goes out to conduct those quality control or special inspections. If the unit passes, then we let the agency know, and the ongoing assistance still stays in place. If the unit fails, again, we would be looking at a notice to repair, either to the owner or client, asking them to make the said repairs within that time frame, and then passing the unit and doing ongoing assistance. If not, then the housing payments would stop for that unit. And of course, all this information would be relayed to the agency to let them know if it failed and if they're not able to make the repairs. So that way a relocation can be prompted. Do you guys have any questions with the flow charts at this time? Okay, seeing none, I will continue. The HQS process. So sometimes we talk about the attendance at inspections. We need to make sure that an adult member is present. That is somebody over the age of 18 years or older. That can be somebody in the household or possibly someone that the household authorizes to be present at the time of inspection. There have also been instances where if it's an apartment complex, they may, let's just say the client's at work and they don't have anybody else to represent at the inspection. The client can leave a note with the apartment manager or front desk manager, letting them know that it's okay to enter the unit to conduct that inspection. So we just need to make sure that we have authorization to enter the unit if they're not there. But no one under the age of 18 would be representing the head of household. And then we have some code of conduct information and guidelines for inspectors. Inspectors are responsible for performing replicable, reliable, and reasonable physical property inspections. Inspectors are to perform inspections using professional common sense in conjunction with inspection protocols. Inspectors will arrive on site at the agreed upon date and time. They will display identification badge at all times while on property. They will defer property-related questions from tenants to the property representative. They will also wear functional but professional clothing and also maintain professional conduct at all times during the inspection and during interaction with the inspection participants. Was there any questions on that? Okay. There are also 3 phases of an inspection protocol. So we have a pre-inspection, an inspection, and a post-inspection. The pre-inspection is consisting of the contact. So you're wanting to inform the client and the owner, and this usually looks like something on an inspection notification letter, however your agency has those. If your agency does not have some sort of a template, we can certainly help you in providing a template to use. And that's notifying the owner and the client of the scheduled inspection date and time. And that allows the client or the owner to notify us before that inspection if they have problems with that inspection date and time. The actual inspection will focus on the inspection itself on the property location. And then the post-inspection would be the actual completed inspection checklist and including that in the client's file to make sure that we're in compliance with record keeping requirements. And also that would include any repair inspection notices and repair notices to the owner. The physical inspection is the actual property inspection that officially begins when the inspector arrives on site and meets with the owner and client. At that time, the inspector will begin with what we have the HUD 52580 inspection checklist to record information. Inspectors will inspect all applicable areas and record their findings. And the areas that are included in an inspection would be the site, the building exterior, common areas, and dwelling units. Some agencies may not be using the 52580. What we've found, and especially with our HUD audit that we recently had with the continuum of care, we do want to use this form whenever possible. I can't say that it is a requirement. However, it has all of the required information when conducting a housing quality standards inspection. So if your agency is not currently using it, I did include that in the as part of the attachments with this presentation, and we can certainly touch base on that if you all have questions. So again, these programs, specifically HUD COC, they would need to meet the performance requirements at commencement or initial inspection or assisted occupancy throughout the assisted tenancy. So annually, at least at a minimum is annually. And for a minimum of a physical inspection, we would need to have present a living room, a kitchen area, and a bathroom. The source on that is our regulation 982401, which is the Code of Federal Regulations that explains the minimum. And this is also based off of regulation for the COC program, which consists of 13 performance requirements. So these items listed are all of the things that touch base on the 52580 inspection checklist, where you would simply go through and answer the questions if it's a pass or a fail. And the next section that we talk about here is lead-based paint. Some of the agencies may be using some sort of a certification or acknowledgement form that the owner says, you know, there's no known lead-based paint. However, we want to start implementing some documentation if your agency is not using anything. So just as a background, lead-based paint, that is a hazard, which means any condition that causes exposure to lead from dust lead hazard, soil lead hazards, or lead-based paint that is deteriorated or present in chewable surfaces, friction surfaces, or impact surfaces, and that would result in adverse human health effects. And this would apply to dwelling occupied or to be occupied by families or households that have one or more children of less than 6 years of age, and all pre-1978 properties. So what we want to see in there is a copy of the worksheet along with any documentation in each client file to show the acknowledgement of the lead-based paint. The link at the bottom of this slide is the lead disclosure source that will give you all things related to lead-based paint. And I also have a pamphlet that I may or may not have put in the appointment, but I will include it in my follow-up email to you all, which is a Protect Your Family from Lead in Your Home pamphlet. And one of the items that I'll use Housing Authority as an example is a lead-based paint disclosure form. It's a form that it has the owner and tenant acknowledge that they're aware of what lead-based paint is, and if it's pre-1978, that there's no known lead. However, we want to implement a lead screening document, which is a 4-page document. I know it sounds a lot when I say 4-page, but it's a screening assessment for you as the worker to ask the questions: is this unit pre-1978? Does this unit have a family member who's under the age of 6 years old, 6 years old or younger? And it would prompt you to answer the questions. So we find that it's an easy read for program workers to look at and determine if we have to go to all the way to a point of a lead-based paint inspection or visual assessment. And the lead disclosure source, the link will give you a vast amount of information on lead-based paint. We don't talk about this much, but we need to start talking about it more frequently, because there may have been or already are units that we could have simply just had our client sign an acknowledgement form for, but didn't follow the necessary steps. So this is one of the reasons that prompted this technical assistance, is to provide this information to this group of people. And some more information regarding lead-based paint in reference to Regulation 35. Before the execution of the lease, the owner is required to disclose any knowledge. So that's where we're talking about that disclosure form. And a copy of that disclosure notice, along with the screening form, would need to be in each client file for each unit. And I put in there each unit because you may have a client file where they relocate frequently. So we need to have one for each unit that they're in. And lead-based paint requirements would apply to the unit interior and exterior paint surfaces associated with the assisted unit, as well as common areas servicing the unit, which include areas through which the residents pass to gain access to the unit, and other areas frequented by resident children less than 6, such as play areas and childcare facilities. Common areas also include the garage and fences on the assisted property. The next section here would be the suitable dwelling size. So Chapter 5 of regulations states that the dwelling unit must have at least 1 bedroom or living sleeping room for each 2 persons. This requirement is designed to ensure that program participants are placed in housing that is appropriate for the household size. So children of the opposite sex, other than very young children, may not be required to occupy the same bedroom or living room, sleeping room. If household composition changes during the term of their assistance, the subrecipient may relocate the household to a more appropriately sized unit, and the household must still have access to the appropriate supportive services. So this is something that you would take into consideration when you're doing the housing inspection. Even if you're, just an inspector for your program and all you're doing is inspections, you're wanting to make sure, does the household size correlate with the unit size, so as to not cause what we call overcrowding or underhoused. And the next following slides are some best practices in regards to the inspection checklist when you're going through and doing actual inspections on units. So some things to be made aware of: all utilities such as water, gas, and electric must be in service. You cannot conduct an inspection without these utilities on. And sometimes if no one's currently living in the unit, they can ask the utility company to put them in maintenance mode, which would temporarily turn on the utility, allowing that inspection to be conducted. So that is always an option, just in case you come into that sort of a situation. All working smoke detectors and carbon monoxide detectors are required in every unit and on every level. They don't have to be in every single room. Minimum is required as 1 on every level. They can be a combo unit, or they could be 2, individual carbon monoxide and smoke detector. Cooking stove and oven must be clean and in working order, as well as a refrigerator. And of course, if those appliances are not there, they need to be in the unit in order for the unit to pass. So we need to make sure that the refrigerator works, that outlet works. So providing that appliance in the unit. There must be a heating system that works. There must be hot and cold running water in the kitchen and in the bathrooms. And there must be a shower or bathtub that works and does not leak. In addition, there must be a secured flush toilet that works and does not leak. One of the examples I kind of use when I'm doing an inspection is while you flush the toilet, you can kind of nudge your knee on the side of the toilet to make sure that it's stable to the ground. So you're kind of doing two things at once, flushing it to make sure that the plumbing system works and you're not seeing a bunch of water, coming out, at the same time, making sure that it's secure to the ground. The bathroom must have either a window to the outside with a screen or an exhaust fan. It does not have to have both, it's either or. There must not be any plugged drains, and that's why we want to make sure when we're entering a room with plumbing that we turn everything on, turn the shower on, flush the toilet, turn on the sinks. We want to make sure that everything drains. And also checking underneath, like the picture showing, checking underneath the cabinets because the water may be draining fine, but you notice underneath that there's a major leak. All windows and doors must have locks that work, and all exterior doors must have working deadbolts. And each room with a window must have at least one window screen in good condition. So we don't want to have a screen on there that has a massive hole or big tears throughout. They need to be good, tight screens. And all bedrooms must have at least one window or exterior door with a screen. Also, the electrical outlets, all outlets must have cover plates and be in good condition. All outlets must be properly installed. 3-prong outlets must also be grounded. So for those who may not be aware or, their inspectors do the inspections, they don't know, there's an outlet tester, so you can plug that into each of your outlets. It'll let you know if the outlet is grounded or not. If the outlet's not in use, then they need to provide a cover plate, not just leave it open, a hole in the wall. All electrical outlets within 6 feet or less near a water source must be grounded to a GFI outlet. So if there's an outlet next to the sink, it needs to be GFI. Must not have any missing, broken, or cracked windows. Must not be any water damage or excessive water damage caused by leaks. So sometimes if you've gone into a unit, there may have been existing water damage that they didn't repair, and maybe you see mold. Well, we're not mold experts, so we can't say there's mold, I'm failing the unit. What you can let them know is that there's discoloration in the unit or discoloration in the bathroom, and that needs to be taken care of. Hot water heater tanks must have a temperature pressure relief valve with a downward discharge pipe that's made of galvanized steel or copper tubing that's 3 feet long, in addition to 2 earthquake straps that are required for all hot water heaters, like the picture that you see that's on the screen. Also, some additional information, there cannot be any chipping, peeling paint anywhere on the interior or exterior of the unit. Floor coverings cannot be torn or have holes that can cause someone to trip or cause a tripping hazard. Stairs and railings must be secure, and stairs with 4 or more steps require a hand railing. And that hand railing needs to be intact, not, wobbly or missing a post. Roofs must not have leaks. You would check the ceiling for stains. So if it looks like a pretty old stain, you probably don't have, anything to worry about. But if it's, recent water damage, then the owner needs to look into that. Security bars on windows must have the quick release mechanism. So, you need to make sure that you have an exit route in the case of an emergency. And if there's just the one window in the room and there's no release, then they need to fix that. All units that are located east of and including Palm Springs must have a functional cooling system because we know how hot East County does get. That is a requirement to have a cooling system, and it needs to be working properly. Overhead lights or ceiling fans must properly be installed. I kind of also use the term, if it's not there, it needs to be there, or it needs to be plugged up. So, if there's multiple holes in the ceiling where maybe there's a light and there's a fan and there's no fan present, then they need to cap that off, but there still needs to be a light in the unit or in the room. And remove any inoperable or unregistered vehicles. We've come across that before too, where there's multiple vehicles on the property. Maybe the owner owns them. Non-operating unregistered vehicles sitting on there is not something that can be on the assisted unit. Modifications or adaptions to a unit must meet applicable HQS and building codes. So this is where I mentioned at the beginning, if there's an addition, then they need to provide permits. If there's not a permit and they're not willing to get it permitted, it needs to be removed. If the owner's not willing to remove it, then we could come across a situation where we can't rent that unit out for the client. Certified carbon monoxide detectors must be installed in all single-family dwellings having fossil fuel burning heater or appliance, fireplace, or attached garage. They must be installed on every level. Any door leading from an attached garage into the unit must be considered a fire-rated door. Most fire-rated doors, contain a seal that verifies the door is fire-rated. In the event that there's no seal found on the door, a solid core door in most instances will suffice as a fire-rated door. And then we also come into contact with emergency repair items. So if you're conducting an initial inspection, move-in inspection, even an annual inspection, health and safety hazards require immediate attention because they are considered life-threatening and must be corrected by the owner or client within 24 hours. So there's lack of security for the unit, waterlogged ceiling in imminent danger of failing, major plumbing leaks or flooding, electrical problems which could result in shock or fire, utilities not in service, no running hot water, broken glass where someone could be injured, obstacles which prevent clients' entrance or exit, lack of at least one functioning toilet, any other item deemed an immediate health or safety hazard. So if there's other items, talk amongst your staff, call, a coworker or another inspector and let them know, hey, this is a situation. I'm not sure if it's 24-hour. And then, we can discuss and handle from there. But those need to be repaired within the 24-hour time frame. It's some best practices for the time frame for repairs. Emergency repair items we just mentioned was 24 hours. Non-emergency repair items must be made within 30 calendar days of the annual, special, and quality control inspection. And the repair refrigerators, range, oven, or major plumbing fixtures supplied by the owner must be completed within 72 hours. That middle item, the 30 days, that's a maximum time frame. So we want to advise that you begin with a shorter time frame, something that's reasonable. I would suggest going with a 7 to 10 day time frame to allow them to make those repairs. And at that point, ask for an extension if they're working on it. Sometimes if you have to replace a window, right, that it may be on back order. It could take longer than the 7 to 10 days to get out there to install. So as long as we can see that the owner or required party is making the arrangements for that repair to get done, you guys can give that extension, but we want to make sure it's done within the 30 calendar days. And then record keeping for housing quality standards. We want to have the completed 52580 inspection checklist in every client file, which would be for an initial, annual, or special inspection. We also want to see the rent reasonableness, which would be our comparables, right? To make sure that the rental unit in the area is reasonable to other units that are not currently assisted by program, as well as a signed lease agreement in the file. And I do have, like I said, I do have the 52580 for you all, so you have reference to that. And those are our key contacts for the COC program. Like I mentioned myself, I am the senior program specialist over our continuum of care program. And then I have our other various management contacts here, as well as our fiscal. What I wanted to do in addition was share what some of these documents look like. So give me just a second. So this form, if you all can see, is the lead-based paint disclosure form. This is what I mentioned some agencies may be using as an acknowledgement, but the house was built before 1978. If they've acknowledged that, then they would fill this out with their client and initial the appropriate areas if there's no known hazards, allowing for a space here at the bottom for the owner and or client or property manager to sign and date that document. The additional item would be the lead screening worksheet that I made mention of. And this is something that's new. Some of you may use it for other programs. It may look similar, but this is something that we definitely want to start implementing with your case files here moving forward. And this is a simple worksheet for the worker to complete. And this is going to show the basic client information here in this box. And then part 1 would ask to determine whether the unit is subject to a visual assessment. So it's going to be simple questions. If you answer both yes to both of the questions below, then the visual assessment is triggered for the unit and staff would continue to part 2. So if the property was built before 1978 and there's children under the age of 6, then that's what would prompt us to do a visual assessment. If you've answered no to one of these questions, then we would stop at that point, simply sign the last page and keep it in the file. And that's to show proof that we've acknowledged the lead-based paint requirements. So if you've answered yes, we would move on to that visual assessment, which is part 2, document additional exemptions. If the answer to all of the questions is no, then we would continue to part 3. But if you've answered yes to any of the following, then it's exempt from the visual assessment requirement and no further action is needed. So it begins to ask you a couple more questions in relation to the unit. Is it a 0-bedroom or single room occupancy sized unit? Has X-ray or laboratory testing of all painted surfaces been conducted in accordance with HUD regulation? Has this property had all lead-based paint identified and removed in accordance with HUD regulation? Is the client receiving federal assistance from another program where the unit has already undergone a visual assessment? Does the property meet any of the exemptions described in this regulation? Then part 3 would be determine the presence of deteriorated paint. So if we have to continue to part 3 on that unit, this is where you would identify those items. The visual assessment staff, what we would want you to do is use this website, which is a visual assessment training on HUD's website, and it's a small assessment for you to use as program staff to help you identify problems with paint surfaces. So if no problems with paint surfaces are identified, then no further action is required at the time. And you would, again, place the screening sheet in the client file. So it would ask you, has a visual assessment been conducted and were any problems with the paint surfaces identified in the unit? And then the part 4 would be documenting the level of identified problems. So all of these parts come into play if you have to go further into the lead-based paint assessment. And this may be something very new to you all because I don't think we have in the past been this detailed with the lead-based paint part of an inspection. We've focused solely on making sure HQS inspection is completed and passed, but this is also just as important as it is a HUD requirement and a regulation. Part 5 would be confirming all identified deteriorated paint has been stabilized. And then the last page is the certification template. So if you're having to do the visual assessment, this is what you would complete. I think that's the last page right here. And then the other item, some of you may be familiar with, some of you not. This is the HUD 52580. So this is the actual inspection checklist that you would use for each unit that you're doing an inspection on. This is a HUD documentation that's used from the HCV program. And if you want on here, you can always indicate your program name, but this again would need to be completed and in the file to show proof of when the inspection was conducted and whether that passed or failed. Up at the top will be the client information as well as your inspector's information here, and then the type of inspection, whether that's an initial, special, or re-inspection. This is general information, would be to show the unit info and housing type off to the right, as well as the owner's information. This small section here is going to be where you indicate whether that's a pass or a fail. And then this begins like the inspection checklist. So it's asking if there's, is there a living room? Yes, no, or inconclusive. And inconclusive, I'll show you where we would indicate if something is inconclusive. But you're either going to have a pass or a fail on each of these items. Now this is page 2. Up at the top, you're going to see some room codes. So these are codes so that when you get to the room section, which I believe is on the 3rd page, 1 is going to constitute a bedroom, 2 would be for a dining room, 3 would be a second living room, 4 is an entrance hall, corridor hall, or staircase, 5 is additional bathroom, or 6 other. And that is, I'll show you where you would indicate that information. This is talking about lead-based paint. And then the kitchen, kitchen area present, electricity, security, ceiling, floor. Right here, you're going to see stove or range with oven and refrigerator. This would be commonly where you would see if there's something inconclusive. And that would be if the stove or range is missing and the tenant needs to provide, or even if the owner hasn't supplied it and put it in the unit yet. Then at the time of the inspection, we would mark it inconclusive. And sometimes in the notes here, we've seen where it'll say owner supplies or tenant supplies. Same thing with the refrigerator. So that would prompt us to look, if we were to monitor this file, to say, okay, it's inconclusive. I should see an inconclusive form as well to show when the appliance was moved in, which would constitute when the inspection passes. This section is for the bathroom. That would be if there's just one bathroom, then it would be indicated in this section for you to indicate pass or fail. And this is where you would indicate the room code. So number 4 here starts the other rooms. So if it's a bedroom, you could put a 1, and then you could circle where it's at. So if you're walking down the hallway and there's multiple bedrooms, this is the bedroom on the right. So I'm going to circle right and then put a 1. And if there's multiple floor levels too, you can indicate here floor 1, floor 2. If there's multiple rooms, again, you would put another room code here. If there's just the 1 bedroom, you could put 1, it's in the center, or you leave it as is and put master and move on. If there is, like I said, multiple rooms, there's spaces to indicate those room codes, which I believe is about 2 pages worth. Yeah. Then you would start the building exterior information where we talked about railings, chipping, peeling paint, the surfaces, gutters. Sometimes, there maybe a chimney is like not even intact. So those are all the visual things that you would see at the inspection. Heating and plumbing, and then general health and safety. On page 6, you would see some information about questions to ask the tenant, which are optional. And then this last page, oh, sorry about that. This last page is questions to ask the tenant or client. Does the owner make repairs when asked? How many people currently live with you? How much money do you pay for rent? And is there any other items that you paid beyond what was already told? And this is really to check against what is in file to ensure that the client is, of course, paying the rent that they're supposed to be paying. Unfortunately, we've seen cases where maybe it's an elderly individual who we've told them your portion of rent is $150 and we're assisting you with the remaining directly to the owner. Sometimes we've seen cases where the owner's asking the client for more rent. That is something that they shouldn't be doing. So this is an opportunity for us to pay attention to those cases. If an owner's asking for more money, that is not allowable. And then we also have a question here about who owns the range and the refrigerator. So that way we can ensure that the tenant or owner supplied appliances are in the unit and who's supposed to be supplying them. The microwave, of course, is an optional appliance. It doesn't need to be in the unit. But if it is there, it needs to be working. And then an option for them to tell us if there's anything else that they need to add to the inspection. Maybe there's an owner that they've constantly asked to repair items that the owner's not repairing. At that point, you as the inspector can, maybe view that item that they're discussing, determine if it's something that needs to be repaired in order to make it habitable. And then we can go back to the owner and let them know, hey, we're not going to make continued ongoing rental assistance payments unless this item is cured. And this is just for you to put your inspector information, the date of inspection, what type of inspection it is. If it does fail, this is also an area where you can make note. If there's items that have failed, you can put down what they are. So that way, when you go back to the office, if you're typing up that notice to repair, you have all the information on this form. And if you need additional pages, you can add additional pages to that. And other than that, I will leave this on the screen and ask if there are any questions from anyone in the group. I don't see that there's anything in the chat box, but I'll leave this as an opportunity for anybody who may want to speak. I'll leave the awkward 8-9 second silence for anybody who may want to ask any questions. And my email is also on this, so if maybe you don't have a question right now and you may want to talk offline, you can email me. I will also include my phone number in the chat so you have it.
This is Becky from JFS. I don't have any questions. I just wanted to say thank you guys for doing this. It's very helpful information.
Oh, good. I'm glad. Thank you, Becky. Yeah, we want to start doing more of these, so please be on the lookout. You may see them more coming just from myself. I know a lot of you are familiar with Natalis, our administrative services officer, and he was basically overseeing our HUD, our COC program. But so you guys know, I am currently the lead COC program specialist over the program. So feel free to contact me, reach out to me. My background is Section 8. I actually worked with the Housing Authority for about 10 years. So I do have a good extensive knowledge with regulation and the HCV program. So if you guys have any questions, please, again, feel free to reach out to me if you need to. But I appreciate everybody's time. I know that we're in the holiday season. Usually everybody's on vacation. So I thank you for everybody who's able to come on and participate today. I will also be following up with an email to you all and providing all of the attachments just in case you don't have them. I did include a confirmation page. If you all wouldn't be too kind as to complete this for us, this is just an acknowledgement that you came today and you attended the workshop. This will also be given for those who may not have been in attendance that need to view it later. If you could send those to me, I would greatly appreciate it. And again, that will be in the email that I send out today. And with that, if you guys are good, I will go ahead and stop recording, and I will give you back 30 minutes of your day